This is WCM's Park Update, a weekly show covering the outdoor hospitality industry, hosted by Ben Quiggle and Mike Gast. During each episode, you'll hear from special guests and campground experts on topics that will help your park flourish. WCM's Park Update is a production of Woodall's Campground Magazine.
Hi, I'm Ben Quiggle, editor of Woodall's Campground Magazine, and this is another edition of WCM's Park Update, sponsored by Spot tonight. And my esteemed colleague, Mike Gast, is here, CEO, founder of the Emola Group. Did I get that right, Mike?
That right.
Yeah.
Emiola Group.
Emiola Group. Well, we were close. We'll get there. And it'll just take a dozen more times probably. Yeah. So, then our guest today is Kathy Reinard, who is the associate broker at DWC Properties. And Kathy, what's the name of that brokerage firm again?
It is Daniel Windus Cook Properties, and yep. Yes, I'm an associate broker with that firm.
Yeah, and they're based in New York, or
correct?
Okay.
Even though I'm the recommended owner KOA realtor, I live in upstate New York, and I do list a lot of independent parks as well, primarily East Coast, run the full East Coast, but occasionally elsewhere, and then I do KOAs everywhere.
And then you also operate a KOA, the Catskill Mountains Gilboa KOA Holiday, I believe. Is that yes. The correct title?
Yes, yeah. And you even said Gilboa right.
I know.
I'll give you props for that one.
I know, it's not Hawaiian. See, Mike, when it's not Hawaiian, I don't have problems.
Sure, Mr. Quiggle, thank you.
So, and it's exciting to have you on. I mean, I see you at conferences all over the place. Obviously, you've helped out quite a few park owners. You've been a park owner yourself over the past few decades. You've owned a Jellystone park. You've converted a few KOAs, parks to KOAs. And so you just have a wide breadth of experience. So I always learn quite a bit every time I get to talk with you at conferences. And I think, one of the reasons we wanted to bring you on was just to kind of pick your brain on that RV, on the campground expertise side of things. And I know you and Jeff Kreider had just done something on tips for first-time park owners. And there's a ton of them. I guess, do you run into a ton of first-time park owners?
I do.
People who want to be
first-timers? Whether they're an owner-operator or they're an investment group coming into the space, I do find that a lot of times they just are not as well prepared as I would like them to be for what their first year or so of ownership is going to be like. So I'm full of advice and tips and opinions, and I always tell everyone, take it with a grain of salt, but here's how I do it. This is what I do, and then you do what you want with this.
Yeah. I mean, what are some of the things that you hear from first-time park owners, I guess, when you first talk with them, I guess, what are the things they tell you? Do a lot of them, I think when I talk with first-time park owners, a lot of it's just a surprise at how much work, I guess, it is to keep a park going.
Yeah, I think that is the definite factor there. It's a lot more work than most people think it is, because a lot of times first-time park owners were campers themselves. So they saw it strictly from the fun side and didn't really think about all the other sides there are to this business. And I don't think that even for investment groups, they don't always understand the difference between a traditional hospitality item in their portfolio, like a hotel, and a campground. There's just a world of differences as to what can go wrong and the timeline in which it has to be repaired.
My favorite is the storage unit guys that come over and say, "Well, I got some extra land. I'm just gonna take over this nearby campground because I'm in the storage business. I know how to rent things."
Yes. One of the things that I always talk to people about when I'm trying to help them find a campground is what are their personal skill sets. If somebody is amazing at marketing and amazing at, all sorts of things, but doesn't know which end of a screwdriver is up, I try not to show them a park that needs lots and lots of work. unless either A, they have very deep pockets, or B, have someone else that is going to be able to make the very much needed repairs. I think a lot of first time owners drastically underestimate the cost of repair and renovation in this space.
Have
Do you
you
agree with that, Mike?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Have you, I guess, seen people come in from different careers? Maybe they don't have a construction background, but they seem to be able to handle that pretty well, I guess. I mean, we see a lot of profiles where, you have people from a variety of different careers and they talk about just love to get into that construction stuff. I guess go learn as they go. Do you see a lot of those types of people?
I do. And I think that if you go with the theory, YouTube is your friend, you can find out how somebody has fixed almost everything. It is not always correctly. One of the things you do have to be aware of with YouTube is just because somebody's showing a video of how they fixed it doesn't necessarily mean that is correct or, but at least you can get it up and running again.
Yeah. I think I was at the Wisconsin show here recently, and I spoke with a number of campground owners who mentioned kind of what you mentioned earlier. It's a lot of work to run a park, and just communicating with people who think it's a good retirement idea. Do you see a lot of those people where they're like, "Oh, we're going to retire and operate a park"?
Yes, I do, and this is where I have been told by other brokers in the space, not the ones I work with, but other brokers out there, that I'm probably too honest to my detriment because I tell everybody how hard it is. But I look at it this way: being an owner myself, I'm in this space, I'm at campground owner conventions. I don't want somebody to feel like I misled them and they thought, didn't give them a realistic expectation set of what it's going to be like. I've also had people literally thank me for talking them out of being an owner operator if, they're 65 or 70 years old and thinking this is going to just be this super relaxing, something that they're going to do. I do try to level set expectations as to the difficulty in operations, but also the joys and the fun. Because obviously, if I didn't love it, I still would not be crazy enough to still be in it. So there you go.
Yeah, at KOA at KOA University, we used to see people all the time that said, "Oh, we really like to RV. We're longtime RVers, so we thought owning a campground would be fun." And we always said, "You're never going to RV again because you're too busy." It just swamps them.
Yeah, and I think part of that is that, and I think you mentioned it when you spoke with Kreider, is that I think a lot of people envision like operating a park, they're going to have like 100 friends, over every weekend and just be able to relax with their campers who are their friends. And I think you mentioned in your story, like it's good to have those relationships with campers, but at the same time, you have to keep the business and the friendship side separate, I guess.
You do. You have to understand that for them, it's a vacation. For you, it is a business. And if you forget that, you end up being what I call a charity without trying to be a charity. It's perfectly okay to raise money for your favorite charity or to do things for others, but I don't think your rates of your campsites should be such that you are creating a charity because you're not charging enough money to sustain your own business. And I find that a lot of times, especially longtime owners or that have parks that are heavily seasonal or long-term stay, whatever you want to call it, tend to confuse the two because they'll leave you for a minimal price increase or a life change for them and not think anything of it. So you have to take care of your business and your family first. And there's nothing wrong with feeling that way. I can't even tell you how many park owners over the years I have known, especially in the Northeast, that have told me about, yep, I'm going to have to get a job this winter at wherever, Walmart, during the holiday season or whatever, because they literally did not make enough money to sustain their family over the winter. And then they'll turn around and say, well, how come you charge for this? Or how come you do that? And I'm like, because it's a business. Well, we think it's part of the camping experience. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not working, at a second job this winter because my park did make enough money to support my family. And I have been trying for years to get people to realize this is a business, not a hobby. And there are still way too many parks out there that are not financially viable, that are marketed as a hobby lifestyle choice. As soon as I see somebody's listing that says wonderful lifestyle, blah, 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 that to me is code for it doesn't make enough money to sustain itself.
So Kathy, how long has it been since you bought your first campground?
I bought my first campground in the mid-90s, so long time since I bought my first campground. The one that we purchased this past year, it's a year ago, April Fool's Day. So, wow. And there are days that last year it felt like I was, a fool, but most of the days it was good.
And you operate that park along with your daughter, Catherine Taylor, who's been on the show and is a lawyer with the Townie. I'm going to get in trouble. The Townie Law Group. That's not the right name, but anyways,
okay, they're based Christine Taylor. Yeah, Christine I'm the Catherine, and it's the town law firm.
See, close, now I'm in trouble.
Ben, it's okay. I won't tell Chrissy.
That's okay.
So yes, we are supposed to be absentee owners. I will say that we're both semi-absentee. Her a little more absentee than I, but last year I was there every weekend except one, just because it was new and we had so many things we were trying to get done. And I know that this year, with the great staffing I have in place, I will be able to start pulling away more and more, and I'm grateful for that.
Yeah. I think one of the other things, we hear from people who are getting into the park industry they're taking over parks that already have like a camper base there. And obviously, sometimes you want to keep those campers. Sometimes you get into a park and you're like, boy, these campers are just a lot of troublemakers, and you want to change kind of the atmosphere. I guess, what's your advice that you give to people who are in that situation where they're afraid that they're going to have to kick out a bunch of seasonals and kind of revamp the park on that end, I guess?
So one of the first things I say to everyone is market your park to the customer base that you want to have. You may already have it, but you may not. Or you may have it on the transient camper side, but not on the seasonal side. Maybe the seasonal guests are not really what you want. But whatever it is that you do want your park to be, you should from day one be marketing to what you want, not necessarily to what you have. That helps you start to get the customers that you want. It helps to set expectations for everyone in terms of what you're looking for. And so that is a key piece. And then it is something that will come over time. You may not be able to get 100% that customer that you want from the very beginning, but it's something to keep working towards. And if you're consistent, and I mean very, very consistent in your marketing plan, in your implementation of the policies and regulations that you have for your park, consistency is always key. You can't do for one what you won't do for another.
Yeah.
Well, what's the market like right now? Is it a good time to buy and sell?
It's a wonderful time to buy, because if you can make a property cash flow or you can get a bank loan right now, chances are relatively soon interest rates will be better, and you will be able to either refinance and get a loan to do more wonderful projects at your park, or refinance and get a loan and pay less, on a monthly basis. It's not as good a time to sell a park as it was a couple of years ago, and that is primarily the change in interest rates, but it also has to do somewhat with the normalization of the space, in that the parks that saw the biggest growth in income during COVID were actually, in my opinion, the parks that were not as great a parks in the first place. Because parks that were really great operators in the space did not see a huge growth in income because they didn't have the space or the occupancy to have a huge growth in income. They might have had a little bit more weekday business, but there just wasn't the room to have these huge spikes in income. So the parks that had the huge spikes in income because people were trying to get out and couldn't find anywhere else to go, those are the parks that have seen a decrease in their income now that not quite as many people are out there as much as maybe were. And people are looking for those nicer properties, and they're not going to their third, fourth, or fifth choice quite so much. And part of that's the economy. And I think
how's the inventory look now?
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mike.
How does the inventory look?
Inventory is actually light. There's not as much out there because I think anybody that was half thinking about selling, grabbed it during those COVID years. So now what we have is more of a typical people who are selling are people who truly need to sell right now, or they feel that it's personally the right time for them. So it's a more typical market rather than an abnormal one, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're seeing in the housing market too. So
correct.
Yeah. So well, we'll be back here in a minute. We got to recognize our sponsor Spot tonight, and then we'll be back. Thanks.
Supercharge your campground bookings with Spot Tonight, the #1 commission-free OTA for RV parks and campgrounds. Through integrations with top property management systems, Spot Tonight displays real-time outdoor accommodation inventory with a marketplace where campers can search for and instantly book campsites. Best of all, it's 100% free for operators. Visit partners.spottonight.com to get listed and unlock access to over 60 million campers.
Hi, welcome back to WCM's Park Update, and we are chatting with Kathy Reinard about different tips she has for first-time owners about the market, the real estate market. I guess, are you still seeing quite a bit of activity from development groups and things like that? Do they inquire about parks to buy? And
they do, but I do think that it is... Right now, I think that the true strength in this market is probably the smaller parks that that maybe the investor groups don't want, because I don't think that owner-operators ever lose confidence in themselves. Wherever the economy is going, if you are a person that is an entrepreneur and you're going to do this on your own, timing to you is lifestyle timing, not so much timing of where the market is or pricing or anything else. And I do see that the lower priced parks actually are getting a lot of great activity from the owner operators, as long as they can get themselves financed, which is a challenge, but I always try to work with them and help them find places. But if we can get that done, then I still see them in that space. There are still those parks that everybody wants to buy. What we are seeing more of are parks that the cost to replicate, the facility price would drive one number, but the income is driving a different one because not everybody did do enough marketing up front or, whatever, so that their income may not actually match the expectation you would think with the amount of money they put into the facility. I have a couple of those right now as listings, but there's still a really good buy for an operator already in the space and knows how to pivot and fix what they're not doing. Yeah. So there's that. One of the things I wanted to say for like any kind of first-time owner or relatively new owner is you need to plan for the unexpected. Because no matter how much money you stick in the I don't know what will break this year category, sometimes you can still be surprised. We were very surprised this year when we had a water issue. I've never had a well go dry before. That's not something I've ever experienced. So having to get water tanker trucks in on 4th of July weekend and then rush and drill a new well, and then that turned into a whole water study thing. Only to find out we probably never needed the well. We just had a massive water leak that hadn't been reported. So yes, it's sort of like renovating an old house. You have to have that contingency fund and hope that it's a big enough one.
Yeah. I get, are you noticing people exploring the third party, like management side of things more too? Recognizing that maybe they aren't the best operators, so trying to find other companies to operate their parks for them?
I think that we're seeing a huge push for that, and we're seeing a huge amount of requests for that.
Hmm.
And there are a lot of people in the space offering those services. Um, I
Yeah.
will reserve opinions. I am not going to mention a favorite or a dislike the most one. I will just say that if I was looking for someone to manage my park, I would be looking for someone who had lots of relevant, specific campground industry experience, not just somebody coming over from some other end of the hospitality space thinking they're the new experts, if that helps at all in terms of trying to filter down to find the right one. And I also think it's important to think about what services do you need.
Yeah.
Not everybody needs the same amount of services with a third party management company. And I don't know that anybody really has like a la carte option so much yet. I think that there would be even more third party management if there were more of an a la carte of services rather than a here's what we do. What do you think about that, Mike?
I'd agree with you. I think that's what a lot of owners that, especially when they're starting to pull back a little bit, there's certain things that they know they're not good at, and they don't want to do that part, but they certainly want to do the other three parts of it. So I think an a la carte is really a good concept.
I think if somebody wanted to start one, I would be thrilled to send them people because I know there's certain things that even myself, I would rather not be that person. I'm very blessed, though, to have good staff that has the skill sets I don't.
So Kathy, what do you think? Put your crystal ball up in front for a second and try to tell us what you think is going to happen with insurance for campgrounds. I know that's been an issue a lot for a lot of the West Coast ones this year.
Well, we can't control the weather, and weather does drive a lot of insurance issues in multiple states. And it isn't just campgrounds, it's any business, any house, anything, like in areas where there's wildfires or areas where there's hurricanes, that those pieces are always going to be difficult. But there is a ton of things that people can do to make the other pieces of their insurance less expensive, and a lot of them don't. There a lot of the various brokerages out there offer wonderful programs and information to their clients in terms of park assessments, liability issues, things that they could be doing proactively. You may not be able to do everything immediately, but have a plan. Have a plan on how you're going to make things better in your park and have less liability. Also, think about your paperwork and if you're to try to limit your liabilities. Those kind of things are important. And talking to your insurance company, your broker, to get ideas of things that you will do. Most of them would be welcome coming and helping you. Sometimes I'm not sure that some of the advice is 100% realistic in terms of exactly how frequently you will be able to do certain things. But there are some things you certainly should be doing and are required to do, like check your fire extinguishers and different things on whether it's a weekly, monthly, whatever basis. There is a lot of that that if you just literally follow the plan or follow the regulations that exist, and ignorance is not an excuse. I think that you can go a long way towards making your insurance less expensive, and but it isn't always just price. I have my insurance split in two pieces because one of the carriers does not do all of the pieces that I would still like to have in this modern world. Employee liability insurance is a big one they don't write. But this particular company, many, many, many years ago, paid out a very, very, very large claim that was weather related and raised me like $12 the next year. So I am loyal. I'm loyal to a fault because I think insurance is one of those things that you really don't know how you feel about your carrier or your brokerage until you actually have a claim. And then it's kind of that service after the sale piece that matters. And that is why I'm insanely loyal to this one particular company.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned, emergency planning. That kind of goes into the insurance aspect as well, making sure your employees and everybody are ready for emergencies and kind of things like that. I guess I know you guys had an incident at your park last year, and you guys kind of had to update your emergency planning based off of that too, right?
Yes. We had an emergency plan in place, multiple levels of emergency planning, for various topics. And one of the things I always say to any new owner is if you're not the person that handles a crisis well, or you faint at the sight of blood, make sure you have somebody on your property that is going to be that go-to person. What we discovered last year in having to have a life flight on our property because a toddler had just tripped and fell into a fire ring. So really tragic thing that there's no way that parents, it was just not really preventable. It wasn't the child wasn't being watched or anything. It was just one of those sad life moments. We found out we have space to land a helicopter, which is really good to know. But we found out that we were all so like, oh my gosh, what, that we were stepping over each other on the radio. And we said, okay, so we practice everything else, but not radio protocol. So moving forward, we have a radio protocol that if there is an emergency, there is one person speaking. And if that person reaches out to any other employee, fine. But if the park manager is not calling for you specifically, shut up, don't say anything unless it's absolutely something relevant that they're not aware of. And so we know moving forward that we won't have this again because we're going to practice that we have employee meetings periodically for various things. We will be practicing radio protocol, probably run a couple of drills, things like that, just to be careful. It sounds, sometimes a little overwhelming, but it's one of those things that it will become part of the psyche and the habit if you keep doing it. And especially parks like mine that will have some new work campers each year, you do have to keep repracticing these things. Even if certain staff know, you have to make sure everybody knows. We do have a lot of park radios. We try to make sure that every staff member that's out and about in the park has a radio so they can call if there's an incident or a problem. We also upgraded our radios to make them even stronger after the helicopter experience so that you can talk anywhere on our 95 acres on the side of a mountain and still hear each other. So I do think that is something important to consider.
So Kathy, you've got a long experience with franchising systems. Obviously, you think there's still value there. There's still relevance in franchising?
I do. I think that the relevance to an owner operator is different than the relevance to a investor, but I think that there are wonderful benefits for both. I do still keep in touch occasionally with Rob Shooter, who always gives me a hug when he sees me, but gives me a hard time for going to the dark side since I've owned 3 KOAs subsequently, and I only ever owned 1 Yogi. But I think that there's a lot of relevance because it helps set very clear expectations for your clients in terms of what they can expect. There are a lot of amazing, beautiful, privately owned properties, and there are groups that are creating their own brands these days. But when you are traveling, and if you're looking, especially if you're looking for, a traveling customer, there's a very clearly defined set of expectations if you're going to a yogi park in terms of family activities and that sort of thing. If you're going to a KOA park, I feel that KOA is a little bit stronger on the site design and the quality of the campsite than Yogi is, but they're not as much into the entertainment and activities, although over time, many more KOAs have a lot more activities. And that's also why I think KOA rolled out the 3 brands to kind of give people, again, help set the expectations of here's what a journey will have, here's what a holiday will have, here's what a resort will have. I think the resort is very well defined. The journey is very well defined. Holiday is a pretty wide swing between the minimum to be a holiday and what a lot of holidays have. Because a lot of us that are going to have holidays are just people that don't want to run a restaurant. So since that is a requirement of being a resort, I think that sometimes the breadth of holiday can be a little widely defined.
Kathy, I think you need to start a barbecue restaurant at your park. So
Well, we are trying to figure out a way to implement a pizza and wing service. I'm in
Okay.
the process of filing an application with the health department to renovate a residential kitchen into a commercial kitchen, which I believe will be approved because I don't need to do a lot to just do pizza and wings. I need to get those 3 bay sinks in, hand washing sink, that kind of thing. I was on the phone before I signed in with you all, with my insurance carrier through my payroll processor saying, okay, you sent me the workman's comp insurance. Thank you. But where is the disability insurance certificate that I also need to have so I can file for these applications? And yeah, I'm that old soul that wants a human and not all of these online technology. When I need a certificate, I just want to call somebody and say, send me the certificate, but wasn't quite that quick today. So here's to hoping that disability certificate shows up soon. Because in New York, you have to have both to do any paperwork.
Yeah. Well, I think we have to wrap up the show here. I think I liked something else you mentioned in the story we have, spending time away from your park. Don't let yourself get bogged down by the 4 or 5% of the people in your park that are negative. I think that's some really good advice, especially as we gear up for the busy summer season, making sure the park owners at least take some time away from their park, even though it's going to be difficult. So.
Well, thank you for having me today. And Mike, it was good to see you again this way, and happy to help anytime I'm needed.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kathy. It was great seeing you too.
Well, thank you for coming on the show. Just real quick before we leave, how do people get in contact with you?
My email address is kathy@dwcproperties.com, or my cell phone is 518-755-0792.
All right. And thank you for coming on. And you're always so generous with your time. And thanks, everyone, for watching. And we will be back again next week.
Thank you for listening to WCM's Park Update, a production of Woodall's Campground Magazine. Join us for a new show each Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern on Facebook, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn for daily news and updates, and subscribe to our news feed on our website at woodallscm.com. Show hosts are Ben Quiggle and Mike Gast. Executive producers Rick Kessler and Alex Burkett. Copyright 2022, G&G Media Group.